Did you know that here in the United States, 60% of adults have a chronic disease? 40% of adults have 2 or more? Does that sound like living life in abundance? Has God given us our bodies just so that they can hurt and so that we can abuse them? Let's talk about this and think about how we can be stewards of our bodies in 2026. Hey folks, I'm Pastor Eric Tritten from Glory Day Lutheran Church in Hudson, Ohio, and this is a weekly word where we're spending some time inspired by an influencer who goes by the name Economicat on the idea of 2026 being a year of stewardship. And we're looking at some passages from Philippians to think about 3 aspects of our lives: our spirit, our minds, and today we're going to talk about our bodies and how we might be stewards of our bodies. And this is, I think, a really important topic for, at least here in the United States at this time. In the teaser, I mentioned that 60% of adults have a chronic condition, 40% have 2 or more. Much of that is related to obesity and being overweight. 75% of men in the United States, 65% of women are overweight or obese, and that complicates things like high blood pressure. About 32% of Americans have high blood pressure. Diabetes, the increase in type 2 diabetes even among children. It complicates heart disease, and it has impacts on cancer, COPD, asthma, arthritis, kidney disease, and even things like depression. And I would love to tell you that those statistics are different for Christians in the church than they are for people out there in the world. But the fact of the matter is, we're very much a reflection of the world and the culture that we live in. And I want to be really clear, God does care about our bodies. He created these bodies. He's the one who designed us to be, body, mind, and spirit. And even Paul, when he's writing to the Philippians, he spends 10 verses thanking them for material support that he received from them. And part of that idea of that support that has come his way, it's related to the fact that he has been imprisoned. And prisons at that time didn't give food, they didn't give clothing, they didn't, basically you were tied to a soldier and, you were stuck where you were. And in Paul's case, he was kind of under house arrest, so he had more freedom than some. But he had to provide for his own needs, for his own meals, his own clothes, all of those things. And the Philippians came alongside of him and they gave him economic support that he might have the things that he needs for his body and also to accomplish his ministry. Now, God created us with bodies. Bodies are his idea. And bodies matter. When you think of a person and when you relate to another person, it is with somebody in their body. He or she, the looks, the touch, the voice, that all has to do with the body. So what might we do to take care of the body? And maybe nothing I'm going to say here is particularly new, but I'd like for you to think about these things in terms of how we take care of these bodies in relationship with God. And, I will go right out on full transparency here. This is something that I'm struggling with too. And I'm a part of this culture, and I need to be a better steward of my body. So what do we do? Well, the experts all tell us that exercise is a good part of this. And there's a phrase that I like that says, motion is lotion. Moving these bodies is something that's good for us. And I probably need to pause right there and take a time out. I do have a doctorate, but it's not the medical kind. And you really, if you're going to start an exercise program or a diet program or whatever, you really ought to talk to your primary care physician or somebody like that to make sure that you've got the information that is specific to you. All right? All right, we're back. Thinking about how we move our bodies is a good thing because God made us to move. This was his design, and it's glorious. I've learned over the years that strength is a key determining factor for quality of life. To be strong enough to be able to get in and out of your car, to take a walk, to go to places like the Grand Canyon or to Acadia National Park or to your grandchildren's house. These things are important. There's a beautiful commercial that comes out every Christmas of an old man, and he's lifting up a kettlebell. and he's really struggling, and you find out at the end his whole purpose was to be strong enough to be able to lift his granddaughter up to be able to put the star on the top of the Christmas tree. That's just, it's strength. So your quality of life can be very connected to your strength, and there are studies that are showing that your longevity is often connected to your strength. I know that when we start talking about muscles and strength and things like that, that people are like, oh yeah, big biceps and I'm going to get ripped and these kinds of things. But it's really not about glamour or vanity, but about being functionally strong, to be able to get up out of your chair, to be able to hold your grandson, to be able to lift up your granddaughter. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about here. So we should do some exercise. We should eat well. There are a lot of studies on diseases that are connected to the Western diet. And there are some particular challenges for us here in America. And it's interesting listening to people in other parts of the world who look at the way that we eat, and they are fairly horrified by the things that are in our food. A lot of it is overprocessed. And don't hear what I'm not saying. Processing of our food is something that has been a huge benefit for us. Think about processing like canning, fermenting, preserving our foods. Those are great things that have allowed people who would otherwise be hungry to be able to have good food that is nutritious. But there is a type of processing, overprocessing, in which really all of the nutritional content of the food is removed, and you're basically just getting calories. And ironically, in some of these foods, they add back the vitamins and stuff that they took out, but they use artificial vitamins instead of leaving the stuff that was good for you that was already there. And these foods tend to be very calorically dense. An interesting example of this is a little glazed donuts. There's a place here called George's. They have these donuts that are like this big, and they are so amazing. I'm not talking about a George's donut. I'm just talking about the little, like this type of a donut. Get a glazed donut, like that. It's about 150 calories. Well, if you got an apple about the same type of a diameter, about 3 inches around, it's 95 calories. Which one do you think is better for you? Which one do you think has better nutrients? Which one do you think is going to satisfy you better in the long run? Now, I'm not saying don't eat donuts. They're delicious. But maybe we should think about how many we're eating, or how often we engage in those kinds of treats, for the sake of our bodies. Another thing that some of the experts talk about is eating closer to the earth. When you go to the grocery store, one of the tips that's often given is to eat around the perimeter of the grocery store. So when you think about the perimeter of the grocery store, you come in, I'm thinking about one of the local Giant Eagles right now, and you enter into the produce section. And as you walk along there, you do come across the deli, which has some pre-cooked food for you. But then you come down through the meat section, and then you get down into the dairy and the cheese and stuff like that. And then you can come back around and check out. But basically the idea is, focus on fruits and vegetables, eat whole meat. And they usually say that leaner is usually better for us. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say there is nothing wrong with an occasional well-marbled medium rare steak. It is good stuff. It talks about whole grains. And that whole grain idea is important because the whole grain still has the nutrition in the grain. Using healthy fats like olive oil, avocado oil. And I'll mention alcohol here. Is it okay to drink some alcohol? Yeah, in moderation. There's a psalm that says wine gladdens the heart. The idea is that this is a gift from God. But drunkenness is not good for us, and overconsumption of alcohol has been shown to have some real detrimental effects on our bodies. So we want to live in a careful relationship with that. Now, what gets in the way of taking care of these bodies? Well, everything. It's just one of those things. Inertia is real. And when you are settled down and you're not using to your body, it's going to take energy to start moving that forward. I've been harping on screens in this series, and I'm going to hit it again because I think that they play a big role in making us sedentary. Those little ones in our hands or the big ones that we put up on our screens. We are surrounded all the time with all kinds of temptations toward indulgence. If you're watching a ball game on Sunday and you see all the advertisements for food, all the advertisements for fun things and so on and so forth, there are all kinds of temptations to just kind of please yourself and to indulge and not do anything. And when you think about those foods, some of those fast food type of options, those highly processed things, they are a powerful source of temporary comfort. But catch that word temporary. They often have a back effect. Same thing with alcohol. There might be a temporary kick that's like, oh, that was fun. But often when we overindulge in these things, there is a bad after effect. And a lot of times we have just other priorities, things that we think are more important than taking care of our bodies. And at that point, I would point out something that you've probably heard if you've ever flown on an airplane. When you fly on an airplane, it will talk about if there is a change in cabin pressure, these things will fall out from the ceiling. They look like cups, and you're supposed to take that and put it over your mouth, and you put the elastic around your head, and you'll be able to breathe. And it says make sure that you put yours on before you try to help anybody else. And I think that there's an element of truth to that. In the plane, God forbid one of those things ever falls in front of me. But, if you do, you got to put it on, because if you don't put yours on, you might actually pass out before you can help somebody else. And that's, I think, part of the idea here with taking care of our bodies. We take care of our bodies so that we can be connected to other people, and so that we can show love and care and live in relationship with them. Now, is this hard? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Sometimes it can be really, really hard. It's depending upon how good or poor physical shape that you're already in. And there's discipline that's involved in this. And nobody likes to deal with discipline. That's just not part of our nature. But it's good for us. And it will make our lives better. And it will add some things to our years that is going to be a blessing in our relationships with others. And it can be something that, as we think about the things that we're doing and as we use these bodies, can lead us to glorify God. There's a psalm that says, I praise you for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You might feel that after a good long walk or a run, or after you lift something that you've been trying to lift for a long period of time, or just by the fact that you were able to walk out and watch a sunset. God has made that body that you are living in. It's a good thing. Maybe we could be better stewards. And by His grace, maybe 2026 is the year that happens. Thanks for being with me today. I hope this was helpful. I'm not trying to throw shade. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. I think I said this before, people in glass houses should not throw stones. I'm not throwing stones. This is a real struggle for a lot of people. But if this was helpful for you, please like it, share it, help other people to find it. And God bless you.